necessary to kill the goddess. Rick gives it a try and lunges forward to attack her, managing to stab her through the gut and finish her off. And now that that's done, Oe is back to searching for Yogiri. It doesn't take long before she spots him through the dust, so she scans him to get a sense of what she is up against. And she immediately regrets coming here. The scan gives her intense nausea as the only information she can get is that Yogiri is the end of all things in the shape of a man. There is nothing that can beat him. She starts throwing up, so Yogiri asks if she is alright, but she is too scared to get any closer to him. She makes up an excuse by saying she wanted to deliver Hanakawa to them, but Yogiri doesn't want him in the first place. With nothing else to say, she makes a graceful exit so she doesn't get killed by him, leaving Hanakawa behind to fend for himself. After all is said and done, there are only a few people left alive. There are many things Rick would like to ask about, starting with Theo over there that sliced off the Swordmaster's head mid-fight. She says what she did is justified, so it has nothing to do with him, but while he didn't exactly like the Swordmaster after his death, Rick is now the new Swordmaster, so he is kind of involved. Yogiri tells Rick to go take a look in the basement to see what the old Swordmaster was doing behind closed doors. And if he still wants to go after Theo, then Yogiri will side with her. Rick doesn't get what he thinks he can do because up till now, he has yet to see Yogiri do any fighting, but the Divine King tells him off for being ignorant and informs our misinformed friend that Yogiri was the one who killed the Dark Lord and all his subordinates. The power he possesses is immeasurable, so Rick understands that if he says she was justified, then he can't argue. He asks what they all plan to go from here, and Theo states she will keep looking for her sister, Euphemia. Yogiri and Danora remember hearing that name back in Hanabusa, so she decides to head there first. Meanwhile, Yogiri and Danora will be heading to the royal capital, so Rick provides them with 2 pendants that should get them in with no issues. With that, they head off on their next journey, leaving Hanakawa behind again, and elsewhere, Cyan gets news that Aoi has gone off the grid after encountering Yogiri. She is starting to get curious to learn what Yogiri really is, so she decides to summon someone who knew him from Earth. She summons a random scientist and asks him about Yogiri, but when the guy learns that she brought Yogiri to this world, he thanks her for saving all of humanity on Earth. Unfortunately, since Yogiri has been using his ability here, it sets off a code red on the scientist's device, which in turn blows off his head and leaves Soon more confused than ever about the origins of Yogiri. Back on the bus the students first arrived on, one of the students wakes up and begins hearing a computer voice playing in her head. It informs her that there isn't much time left, so she's going to have to bear with it and accept the BS it's about to explain. She is apparently an artificial human, and the body consists of several units which work together to function normally. The one in control of the body right now is the personality unit, as it has the highest authority among them, so she's the one who gets to make the decision on what they do from here. Ayaka's body has limitations placed on it to imitate a human, but the hole in her chest is incompatible with life, so she can either choose to keep being human or take the limiters off and stay alive. She never even liked any of her classmates to begin with, so she obviously doesn't want to die because of them and agrees to release the limiters. With the limits broken, her body will be able to repair itself, but she's going to need a lot of organic material to do so, and it just so happens that there is a dragon corpse just laying outside the bus. She hesitantly grabs a chunk of flesh, but after taking one bite, she realizes this ain't that bad actually. We get another flashback to Yogiri's time with Asaka, and she was really struggling to prepare a family meal with the cooking skills of a broke college student. Whatever it was she tried to make, Gordon Ramsay would not approve in the slightest, and neither does Yogiri, as he tells her straight up that her food is trash. She can't handle being roasted by a 7-year-old, so she yells at him that he needs to say the food is delicious no matter what when a girl cooks for him. Otherwise, he'll never get laid. Yogiri doesn't really get what she's talking about, but she just tells him to say her food is delicious even if he doesn't think it is. He says it's delicious, but that lie doesn't make her feel any better because deep down she knows her cooking skills suck. Yogiri ends up finishing the travesty of a meal, and now that food has been taken care of, Asaka looks at the list and sees her next task is to teach him some elementary school stuff. She's getting fed up with the amount of work she has to do for this job, and she doesn't even get a bonus for it. She resigns herself to her fate and begins teaching Yogiri how to write when she suddenly hears the sound of someone approaching. Yogiri isn't too bothered by it since he knows it is probably just the porter that brings supplies every once in a while. She goes to check and finds that the porter is actually a robot that they send down here because all the people are too scared to be near Yogiri, and once Asaka realizes this thing brings supplies for them, she asks for some elementary school equipment and a cookbook so she can learn to suck less at cooking. And some things for entertainment as well, but with that taken care of, she goes back over to check on Yogiri and decides he has worked hard enough for the day, so she says it's time for a break to play outside. They get outside and Asaka still can't wrap her head around how this place has such a wonderful view, but is actually located underground. Yogiri is having fun playing in the artificial nature here, but Asaka can't help but worry that she won't make it out alive of this place for some reason. The month ends and Asaka is set to give her report on what has been going on with Yogiri. The scientist applauds her for successfully surviving a whole month on the job, as this is an all-time record. She complains that she has finished teaching him elementary school work, but anything higher is beyond her level of expertise, but the scientist assures her that it will be fine since they can just use a remote education system for that. Asaka was hoping to get an actual person to teach Yogiri, but while that would have been ideal, it's not exactly easy to fill the position when you have to sign a death waiver to take the job. The scientist asks if she isn't happy with her current working conditions, and she's obviously dissatisfied after she was locked in there for a month, but the scientist knows just the thing to persuade her and drops a fat stack of cash on the table. And once Asaka opens it, all the dissatisfaction immediately leaves her body. There is still the issue of not being able to use the money while she's stuck down here, but she's free to take a break from work whenever she wishes. It was in the contract, but they thought she would die early or resign before she would ever need to take a break, so they forgot to mention it to her. Asaka is a little worried about who will take care of Yogiri while she's gone, but he should be fine with just the robots as long as she is only gone for a few days. She is just now realizing that there were robots who could have been cooking for them this entire time, so there was no reason for her to learn how to cook. But at least after the past month, her cooking isn't as bad as it initially was. Asaka decides to take the break right now and slams the paperwork on the table, and we later see her napping on a bed, but when she wakes up, she isn't familiar with this location at all. She tries to remember what she was doing before she blacked out, which was some shopping, some more shopping, and even more shopping before ending off the night by getting the best room available in a hotel. That was an amazing night, but that doesn't explain how she ended up here. She thinks she may have been abducted, and a voice tells her that she is correct about that assumption. She was indeed kidnapped, but there's no need to worry because they are nice kidnappers and have no intention of harming or harvesting her organs. That obviously doesn't sound very reassuring, but the voice goes on to state that they are an organization that seeks to save the world by sealing away the danger, so they would just like her to answer some questions for them. Meanwhile, back in Yogiri's confinement base, he has noticed Asaka has been gone for a while, so he asks one of the robots what happened to her. The robot informs him that she is currently on a leave of absence, but he wonders when she will be back. He was getting a little lonely, so he decided to go outside and look for her himself. But first, he asked another one of the robots if it knows where she went, but it doesn't have access to that information. So Yogiri then asks who would have information about Asaka, and is informed that the researchers would likely know. The robot really sold out the entire facility and leads Yogiri to the door that will allow him to go outside. However, it explains that this door cannot be opened from the inside since it is remote controlled, so Yogiri just calls out to the scientists that are watching in the cameras and tells them to open the door. Some stuff happens, and the lead researcher makes it to the room only to find that all except one woman are dead. The woman was the only one who listened to Yogiri and opened the doors, but when the other scientists tried to stop her, they were all killed in an instant. Right now, the woman is currently opening every door Yogiri asks her to with tears in her eyes because she doesn't want to die, and the lead researcher can't stop her. He never thought you would be able to kill people even when he can't directly see them, but since things have come to this, he tells the guard standing behind him to shoot the woman that is opening the doors. However, before he could even take aim, Yogiri had already put him out of commission and he dropped to the ground. The lead has nothing more he can do, so as Yogiri walks up to him and asks where Asaka is, he answers the question. She is currently on leave, but he doesn't think she will be coming back anytime soon because she was abducted by a certain organization. Yogiri asks why they haven't tried to save her yet, but this facility is unable to challenge that organization because they are too powerful. If that is the case, Yogiri says he'll just go and save her himself, but he also tells him to not mention all the people that died here today to Asaka when she gets back. And the next thing we know, there's chaos all over that organization's base as Yogiri is making his way in and killing all the soldiers that tried to stop him. The heads of the organization aren't surprised that their fodder soldiers weren't enough to stop him, as they believe Yogiri can kill anything that he looks at. But that makes their job simply to kill him before he can look at them. Unfortunately, they were wrong about the conditions of Yogiri's ability, as once all the snipers had gotten into position and were ready to fire, they all dropped dead before their fingers could even get close to the trigger. Meanwhile, Asaka is still in her holding cell, wishing she had applied for a more normal job, but she is also worried about Yogiri's well-being since she can't be there to look after him. Just then, she hears explosions from the chaos happening outside and thinks this might be a good opportunity to escape while everyone is in a state of confusion. But as she heads for the door, the head of the organization comes in and points a gun at her. Asaka is now being held at gunpoint by her and used as a meat shield to get Yogiri to back off. Yogiri is glad he has finally found Asaka. The head tries to blackmail Yogiri by telling him she will kill Asaka if he comes any closer, but that goes about as well as you would expect. Once Asaka is safe, Yogiri runs up to her and asks to go home, so the two head out of the organization and Asaka sees the carnage Yogiri caused while trying to get to her. And while she is taken aback at first,